The snow fell thick that February morning as Marcus drove his daughter Emma to school. At 52, Marcus had learned to handle most things life threw at him, but single fatherhood still challenged him daily. Emma sat beside him, 14 and quiet, lost in her own teenage world. "Dad, you're going too slow," she mumbled, eyes on her phone. Marcus smiled. "Better slow than sorry, sweetheart." The roads were treacherous, ice hidden beneath fresh powder. He'd driven these Vermont roads for decades, worked as a warehouse supervisor at Hartwell Industries for 23 years. It was honest work that put food on the table after Emma's mother left when she was just 3. Traffic had slowed to a crawl when Marcus saw it happen. A red sedan 3 cars had suddenly spun out, sliding sideways before slamming into the guardrail. The sound of crunching metal cut through the soft morning. "Stay here," Marcus told Emma firmly, already unbuckling his seatbelt. He ran toward the wreck, his boots slipping on the ice. Other drivers stayed in their cars, phones out, probably calling for help. But Marcus saw something they didn't notice yet. Smoke was rising from under crumpled hood. Thin at first, then thicker. A young woman sat slumped in the driver's seat, blood trickling down her face from a cut on her forehead. She looked dazed, barely conscious. Marcus tried the door, but it was jammed. He could smell gasoline now, sharp and dangerous in the cold air. "Miss, can you hear me?" he shouted through the broken window. "We need to get you out." She looked at him with unfocused eyes, tried to speak, but couldn't form words. Her blonde hair was matted with blood, her red shirt darker where she'd hit the steering wheel. The smoke was getting worse. Marcus knew he had maybe a minute, maybe less. He grabbed a rock from the roadside and smashed the remaining window glass, then reached in to unlock the door from inside. It still wouldn't budge. The frame was too bent. Behind him, someone yelled, "Get back, man. It's gonna blow." Marcus ignored them. He braced his foot against the car and pulled with everything he had. His shoulders screamed in protest, old injuries from his warehouse days flaring up. The door gave an inch, then another. Finally, it wrenched open enough for him to reach the woman. She was mumbling now, something about a meeting about her father. Marcus unbuckled her seatbelt, carefully lifted her from the seat. She was young, maybe mid-20s, dressed in business clothes under her coat. He carried her away from the vehicle, moving as fast as he dared on the slippery ground. They were 20 feet away when the engine compartment erupted in flames. Not an explosion, but fire spreading fast, hungry and hot even in the snowfall. Marcus kept walking, kept putting distance between them and the danger, until they reached the side of the road where Emma had gotten out of their car, her face pale with worry. "Dad, you're crazy," she whispered, but there was something new in her voice. Maybe respect, maybe fear, maybe both. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They took the young woman, still barely conscious, into the ambulance. A police officer asked Marcus for a statement, took down his information. Through it all, the woman kept trying to look back at him, tried to say something the paramedics couldn't quite make out. "You did good, sir," the officer said, shaking Marcus's hand. "Real good." Marcus just nodded, suddenly exhausted. He drove Emma to school, both of them quiet now, processing what had happened. Life could change in a heartbeat. He'd always known that, but days like this reminded him just how fragile everything really was. 3 days later, Marcus was supervising a shipment at the warehouse when his manager called him into the office. Standing there was an older man in an expensive suit, someone Marcus recognized from company meetings. Richard Hartwell, the CEO, the man whose name was on the building. "Mr. Davis," Hartwell said, his voice thick with emotion. "I needed to meet you in person." Marcus felt confused, worried he'd done something wrong. "Sir, you saved my daughter's life 3 days ago. Claire, that was her in the accident." The room seemed to tilt slightly. The young woman in the red shirt, bleeding and dazed, was Claire Hartwell. Marcus had worked at this company for over 2 decades and never connected the dots. "I just did what anyone would do," Marcus said quietly. "No," Hartwell said firmly. "Most people stood by. You risked everything." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "Claire wants to thank you herself." She's home recovering. But she'd like you to visit, if you're willing. 2 days later, Marcus stood on the porch of a house that seemed more like a mansion, Emma beside him. He'd almost left her home, but she'd insisted on coming. "I want to meet her too, Dad," she'd said. Claire Hartwell opened the door herself, a white bandage still visible on her forehead. In person, recovered and standing, she looked composed, professional, yet her eyes were red-rimmed. "Mr. Davis," she said softly. "Please, come in." They sat in a living room that could have fit Marcus's entire apartment. Claire's father was there too, along with her mother, a kind-faced woman who kept dabbing at her eyes. "I don't remember much," Claire admitted. "Just smoke and fear, and then your face at the window. The doctor said if you'd waited even 30 seconds more for the fire department, the smoke inhalation would have been much worse, maybe fatal." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just glad you're all right, Miss Hartwell. Claire, please." She smiled, and Marcus could see strength behind the gratitude. "My father tells me you've worked at Hartwell Industries for 23 years. "Yes, ma'am. Good job, good people." Richard Hartwell leaned forward. "Marcus, I'd like to do something for you. A reward, a promotion, whatever you need." But Marcus shook his head. "That's not necessary, sir. I have what I need. A job I can count on, a daughter I love, a roof over our heads. What happened on that road wasn't about reward. It was about doing what's right." The room fell silent. Emma looked at her father with pride that made his chest tight. "There's one thing," Marcus added quietly. "The school Emma goes to, they cut the music program last year. Budget issues. She loves music. Used to play violin before we couldn't afford lessons anymore. If you wanted to help someone, maybe that program could matter to other kids like her." Claire's eyes brightened. "Consider it done. And Marcus, I'd like your daughter to have private lessons, if she wants them. It would mean a lot to me." Emma's face transformed, disbelief giving way to joy. "Really? Really?" Claire confirmed. As they prepared to leave, Claire walked Marcus to the door. "You know," she said, "I was rushing that morning. Had a big meeting I thought was so important. I was distracted, not focused on the road. This whole thing taught me something about what actually matters." Marcus nodded slowly. "Life has a way of teaching us those lessons when we're ready to learn them, sometimes the hard way." "Will you stay in touch?" Claire asked. "I'd like that. My father would too." "We'd be honored," Marcus said simply. Driving home, Emma was quieter than usual, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Finally, she said, "Dad, when I saw you running toward that fire, I was so scared, but also so proud. You're my hero, you know that?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You're the reason I did it, Em. Every time I make a choice, I think about you, about the man I want you to see when you look at me. Today, tomorrow, 20 years from now." The following weeks brought changes. The music program at Emma's school was reinstated with a generous donation. Emma started violin lessons with a teacher Claire personally recommended. Marcus stayed at his warehouse job, though Richard Hartwell made sure his contributions over the years were properly recognized. But the biggest change was simpler than all of that. Marcus had a new friend in Claire, someone who understood that life's value wasn't measured in money or status, but in the moments we choose kindness over comfort, courage over safety, connection over convenience. On Emma's 15th birthday, Claire showed up at their small apartment with her violin, the one she played as a girl. "I want you to have this," she told Emma. "It deserves someone who'll love it the way you will." As Emma held the beautiful instrument, tears streaming down her face, Marcus understood something profound. That snowy morning hadn't just saved one life. It had opened doors neither of them knew existed, created bonds that would last far beyond that single act. Sometimes being a hero isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. Sometimes it's just about showing up, doing what's right, and trusting that kindness plants seeds we may never see grow. But grow they do, in ways both small and sacred, changing lives in ways we could never predict. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to stay connected with more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And leave a comment below telling us about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. Your story matters too.